we find out that, wait a minute, we got trees older than the book of Genesis, right? We have bodies older than the book of Genesis. So if everybody was supposed to be created within this time frame, this whole 4,000, 6,000 years or what have you, then how was it people that existed hundreds of thousands of years ago and we have their bodies, right? So something to think about. Well, we have stuff in Egypt that predates and stuff in Sumer, Babylonian stuff that predates. And, how can that be if the world was just created? I mean, even if you look at it and say maybe it's pertaining to when it was written, it still doesn't work. It doesn't fit with that time because we have so much proven that predates all of it. It's long before. And then when you match it up with the timeline that the Bible's giving you, it just don't match up. So again, man, you guys got good questions, but you got to really do your research on a lot of this stuff and pay attention to the books and the history with these books, especially the 16 books that came before the King James Version and how they came about and what happened to the people that basically created them. It's a lot with that whole thing. And I break all that stuff down in a lot of videos. But, being in this position to be able to put out information over the years and having so many people listening, I really strive to get things right. A lot of you guys sent me a question about the manuscript. I put out all those videos on the manuscripts and, just how to do right research and understanding what empirical data and understand how that, archaeology even, deals with the Bible, which archaeology is telling you, hey, there is no way we can prove that the Bible is real. We can't prove it. Archaeology has never come out and said that we prove the biblical stories is true. Never. It tell you that we can't because it's based in religion. A lot of this stuff is impossible to prove. So again, it goes back to what I was saying before. You have to have a degree of faith to deal with it. That's why the book requires faith and belief because there's no proof. Archaeology could never prove the Bible. Anthropology could never prove the Bible. And it'll tell you that, when you go and look it up. So it's so much to get into. It's a lot to get into with the whole thing. But the manuscripts is what people hang their hat on. The Bible is how we got our understanding of this whole religious thing anyway. So it's what people look to, and understandably so, as to what they believe and what's their go-to in their faith, what book they tend to read. Most people, it's the King James Version. So it's the history of it all that you really got to get into to try to make it all work. And this is what I talk about. I don't like dealing in the book itself because it's not proven, but the history is true. The history outside of the book is true. And it's what we can look to and say, okay, well, we don't find this in the world. We don't find this in history, what the Bible is talking about. There's biblical history and there's actual, factual, proven history, and they don't meet. They just don't, plain and simple. And just going into Egypt itself and looking at everything that's there and the surrounding civilizations, you would think talked about the Jews, and the Greek historians talked about the Jews, and they didn't write anything on them, didn't say anything about them. For such a large group of people to have so much power and do so much in biblical history that's supposed to be real history, you would think we would see a lot more, and we just don't. So as I showed you guys, we have a proven history of the Greeks and Romans creating gods in their image. Showed you guys with Serapis Christos and them basically forcing or indoctrinating those beliefs onto the people in those countries and bringing about this faith that we have now. So we have proven history, proven artifacts that show that in the image of these conquerors, they wanted us to worship them as gods. And then all of a sudden, we're supposed to just ignore the fact that Jesus looks like Serapis Christos. We're supposed to ignore it. You're supposed to ignore the fact that they had already tried to force the worship of a god in their image on us. And then we go into Rome and we find the worship of the same deity in Rome where we get our Bible before Jesus. Matter of fact, during the same time. Then you got to look at the fact that we don't have the original manuscripts and look at the fact that the manuscripts were anonymous when it was first found. There was no Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John or names on the manuscripts until after the 2nd century AD. So who came up with these names? And I broke this whole thing down. Like, who are these people? You mean to tell me for hundreds of years, nobody knew who wrote these manuscripts that's supposed to be dating towards, during the time that Jesus was alive? And they're anonymous. So who came up with the names? A lot of people don't even know that. And the manuscript copies that we do have are full of errors and mistakes. And it just kills the whole concept of there being this whole infallible and inerrant word of God. We don't have it. We never had it. We have copies of manuscripts that they use to give us what we have today in the Bible, which we know is coded, right? Talked about Sir Francis Bacon being the editor of the Bible. He was considered one of the fathers of Freemasonry. King James was a Freemason, and that's what's coded in the book. And it's still, no matter how you slice it, to me, the greatest book ever written. And I just marvel at it. It went from it just shot to the top of my list over the last decade because of so much I've uncovered reading the book and seeing the beauty of it and seeing what they did to give us this message coded and why. And that's the key part that I talk about is the why of it all that you guys need to understand. But you get caught up in the stories, you get caught up in what you've been taught and don't go out and learn and seek that knowledge for yourself. There's a problem. They call it the Holy Bible, or people say they call it the Holy Bible because it's full of holes, right? And it is. It's a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of, contradictions within the book, but they can all be explained, most of them, when you really understand what the book is talking about in the esoteric aspect of the book, which is what I get into, as you guys know. So this is for a lot of the new people that's new to my channel that contacted me about this stuff, and I wanted to not leave you guys hanging anyway. But it's good to see a lot of people engaging in understanding the biblical manuscripts that existed before the Bible and what that means for our own Bible. And the story is, of course, that all the translations, before the King James Version is kaput. This joke. It's not good. Not a faithful translation. The King James, who was basically divinely inspired to give us this translation, well, according to the Black Hebrew Israelites. But as far as the history on it, that the Protestants basically commissioned him to do it. Now, he didn't even really want to do it, and he got help to do it. And Francis Bacon even got help, with editing the Bible, and it became what it is. But this is not something that we can even prove is this, miracle or blessing from God to give us this true translation, which is their reasoning behind it, saying that we didn't have a faithful translation of the Hebrew to English. And this is what it was about. Supposedly Rome outlawed the translation of the manuscripts in any other language but Latin. And we had the Vetus Latina, Latin Vulgate is what they was using in those codices. A lot of them are written in Greek. So, it was control with the manuscripts. And you got to think about that as well. Control for what? If it's supposed to be a book that you're teaching to all people to understand and know the message of God, why would you restrict it in any way? So it's a lot to all that you guys got to really look at. And then the differences in the manuscripts is the main thing, the differences. Because why would you need so many manuscripts or Bibles if it's the same message? If everything's the same and happen the way it's supposed to have happened in the story, why we need different versions, right? Why do we need different books? It should all be the same as the originals, or the oldest, let's just say. And we know for a fact that that's not true. Even going back to the 2nd century, we know with the manuscripts we do have and the fragments we do have, it's not true. Now, another thing you guys got to do is find me, go ahead and find me as far as the Old Testament manuscripts to the count of the New Testament. There's far more New Testament manuscripts than Old Testament manuscripts. And that's something to really think about. And a lot of people don't even, worry about that whole thing because the main message is, people harp on as far as Christians is the New Testament manuscripts because it pertains to Jesus Christ and the whole message of Christ and being saved or what have you. So more people are concerned about the New Testament versus the Old Testament. And then that's crazy because you really need to understand what's being said and, how this whole thing comes into play. But it's a lot. It's a lot. So, I commend you guys who've been studying and been keeping up with understanding these manuscripts and the context of them and what it all means for your King James Bible and how to put it into whatever you want to believe as far as your faith. Like how does that work? How do you hold on to that faith and belief knowing all of this, problems and issues with your book? So there's something to think about, man. Like my whole thing has always been to just put out the knowledge and, we go back and forth with Christians. We have our debates, but I know a lot of good Christian people, a lot of people who have good lives being Christians or what have you, and that don't shun me for being me or what have you. you choose to believe what you choose to believe as grown-ups or what have you. But as far as the true realm of what's true and what's proven, this is where I come in at. This is where I'm basically stating facts and what's been proven. So most people will get into the manuscripts who understand that and the flaws that come with them, and they still choose to believe. And some people don't. Some people use it as a way to figure out what's really going on. Because when you dive into the manuscripts and you start really getting into the history of everything, it's tough to segue out of it. There's a rabbit hole, and you go deeper and deeper into it the more questions you ask and the more you look at actual history. And that's the key. They try to get you wrapped up in this biblical history and you're missing actual history. And then, you caught up in the faith of the belief that you're not paying attention to a lot of the crazy stuff that's being said in the book itself. The craziness of the God of the Old Testament. And the stuff is just weird. The fact that it's condoning slavery, and how are we supposed to believe in us praying to this God, as black folks, when we didn't receive any remedy throughout the hundreds of years of slavery, when we were supposedly worshiping the same God? How are we worshiping the same God when their God is giving them power over us and answering their prayers as far as keeping us enslaved and using us to make riches, where we were basically being raped and castrated and murdered, still praying to the same God? It's just stuff we got to think about. As black people, we look at things different than anybody else. And I would think you would, but a lot of black folks don't. We are the majority who are believing in this thing. But, if you choose an alternative point of view or viewpoint, these are some of the questions you're gonna run into. So you have to look at that, and the fact that we don't have the originals, the fact that the oldest New Testament manuscripts are anonymous, and the controversy surrounding who gave the books their name, the flaws, the mistakes, the errors, and the book that's supposed to be infallible and inerrant when clearly there's errors, right? So it's a lot to look into, a lot to get into. But yeah, I just want to get into this whole thing and touch on it and answer those questions. It's going to be some people who don't want to accept what they're seeing with their own eyes, and it's fine. But it's like if you want to be true to yourself and true to your spirituality, I would say do the work. Read the manuscripts, read the books, do the research, look at actual history, and compare it. What can be proven versus what can't be. There's just common sense things that's just there, and I know a lot of people like to use common sense when it comes to religion, but it's just stuff that's just there, man. It should spark something in you to search, man, to move forward. And if it don't, then you're just where you're supposed to be. This is your role. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be faking what you believe, because there's a fakeness to it. And it's one of the things that we poke at Christians with, because we know, if you're on YouTube, 9 times out of 10, you're not living, right by that Bible, and you don't even know how. You just think, oh, well, I can just repent, when the book telling you clearly you can't. You're listening to what the preacher's saying, and that wasn't actually in the book. Hebrews 10:26, right? So you're taking verses and making it fit what you want it to fit, so you can continue to sin or believe in the book the way you want to believe in it. So there's that. It's this scared fear context to it all, where you have people believing in something that they don't actually follow due to fear they're going to lose their job, fear that things are going to go wrong in their life, and they're not being true to what's actually going on. And there's consequences to that. And you don't understand the consequences because you think you and your religion and your belief system is bigger than what we're talking about, because what we're talking about as far as conscious people is not at the forefront. Then you talking about a book that you believe is true that says that Satan is the God of this world, but yet the world is giving you the book, right? Think about that. Right? Satan's the God of this world. What is it talking about? What can that mean? Well, how come government is government, and the government is basically going against the Bible, making gay marriage legal, allowing all these TV shows to openly worship Satan, and everything that's completely against the book is our government that's supposed to be ordained of God is going against the book. What's going on here? Satan's supposed to be the God of this world. So how am I believing the world, even though the Bible says don't basically, be in this world, don't follow certain things, what have you. You're not supposed to even be dealing with people who don't believe or dealing with situations that's outside the, let's just say the laws of the Bible. So a lot of stuff that you're into, TV watching, certain, let's just say sports or things that you do in your daily life, if you really dig into it, it's against your religion, but you still do it. So yeah, it's not semantics. It's not things you can really poke at and say, oh, I don't say that, what have you. It's you interpreting what you want to interpret to fit the sin that you love doing, plain and simple. So it would be better for you to come into the right understanding and get yourself out of that guilt and, fearful situation, and just know what's actually going on and what this book is actually trying to tell you and what it's really about, plain and simple. But yeah, thanks for taking time to watch. Make sure you guys grab the new video, check it out. Scholars, make sure you guys stay tuned. A lot of videos coming to the app. And yeah, we got a lot coming up. So yeah, see you guys next video. Peace.